like these reed diffusers are kind of a perfect symbol of what it's like to run a business like mine. They were initially added to my product line because I thought they'd be easy and they had like a pretty straightforward recipe. I could use some things I already had on hand and I could bring to market something that people had asked me for. And in a lot of ways, they fulfill those elements that, like, all those things are true, but they also have brought a lot of up and down. These bottles keep running out of stock. The outer packaging takes way longer to assemble than I expected, but I don't want to compromise on the aesthetics. And I've had to make changes to deal with leaking bottles and ruined orders. And I think that any of these setbacks are things that in other businesses would have made me sort of give up on them. And that's where I love the magic of Bushyl and why it feels like I've somehow stumbled upon the right thing for me. Because even with all of these setbacks, I do have a period of time where I just like sort of panic and throw a pity party for myself. But eventually I am able to keep moving forward. And I don't know exactly what's different this time, but I do know that that feeling is part of why I know I'm where I need to be just in terms of this point in my life and having this business, because it's clear to me that this is something I used to kind of use as an excuse to quit whatever it was I was working on. I would say, oh, I'm not good at this. This isn't right for me. And instead, this time around, I've had the ability to shift that into how do I solve this problem? So bless these reed diffusers. I really love the way they look and I am so committed to them. And I am glad that I didn't give up on them the way that I have on other things. So why do I have to go to a different city to have like a mini retreat for my business? Because I'm really the only person who works on my business and I could definitely do that just from the comfort of my own home. Over the summer, I was talking to this woman in Milwaukee who has multiple successful businesses. They're more like service-based or like consulting. And so obviously it's a different business model. This wasn't on, so I have to turn it on. She's had these businesses for like over a decade. And she was talking about how hard it is to like really take time to think about big picture stuff in your business and how you really have to set aside time to do that specifically. And she talked about getting a hotel room, and the sole purpose of her time there was to like plan for the next year or 6 months or whatever. And that it was really nice for her to like have that physical, catalyst for doing those kinds of things. And so I've thought about that since she said it and really wanted to do it more often. The upside of buying as much stuff as I do for my business, like all of my ingredients and packaging and all of that stuff, those are expensive things, but I get credit card points on all of those things. And so I sort of just like on a whim looked into if I could get an entire hotel room stay with my credit card points, and I could. So it really made it like very easy to say yes to this idea of a free hotel. I can drive down to Chicago pretty easily from Milwaukee. So it's like, I don't have really much transportation costs except for gas. And so then I am here in this sort of like inspiring new environment and able to tell myself like, okay, this is a time for planning. We're not going to do like nitty gritty work. We're going to plan for the next quarter and figure out what's happening each week, what needs to happen each week, what are the things that I've been ignoring that need to happen simply because I'm like overwhelmed by getting out orders. And since it's like a Friday to Saturday, I don't feel as much pressure to be doing like regular workday stuff anyway. This is just like, it was like the sort of perfect time to do this kind of thing. And so, you know, yesterday I got here, I think I got into the city around like 11:30, and I sat and I found like a place to sit and have lunch and just like get things sort of started, and just like planning out the agenda for the rest of this overnight. And even just that, I felt like it's crazy how many ideas can come to you when you're sort of like in a new space and feeling, I don't know, just like the energy of something outside of your routine. So like obviously you don't have to go to a hotel or like a new city to do something like this. But for me, like I said, it was free and it's convenient, it's close by. And so I just like, I also have like a lot of nostalgia towards Chicago because I lived here. And so I just really enjoy myself anytime that I come. And so I'm just like, I feel like it's really good for my mental health. And I consider it, on top of just like being good for the business to take these times to do this kind of stuff, it also is just like good for my spirit. And, you know, I just really enjoy myself when I do this kind of stuff. And then as far as like what I'm thinking of, like what am I working on when I'm here, I feel like I started thinking about like just general categories, like what are the main buckets where I feel like I haven't been spending as much time on. One of them is branding. I love a lot of my packaging design, and like I'm really proud of all that stuff, but I also just want to make sure that it's like very cohesive. I have a lot of different products now, and for some of them, you know, there are different rules for different products, which I think is okay, but I also want to make sure that as I'm doing that, I'm not making it too disjointed. And beyond that, I also want to make sure that like my sort of digital materials follow the same rules. So not only the website, but also, you know, the cover for this YouTube channel, you know, there's like cover art for that. And I feel like up until recently, it had been something that just didn't really like fit the brand. Beyond this is what my packaging looks like. What do my branding materials look like? What are the pillars of my brand? Like what's the brand philosophy? Who are the ideal customers? Because I feel like I have sort of an idea, like a general idea of my ideal customers. But the other thing is now that I'm doing more wholesale work, I now have multiple ideal customers, because I feel like I have one customer that buys from me, one ideal customer that buys from me like from my website, and then I have another type of customer who buys from me on Faire or like buys wholesale. And especially when we're talking about ideal customer, like there's definitely interactions I've had that are more enjoyable than others, I guess I'll just say. And so I wanted to sort of define like, who am I targeting with this stuff, and what are they looking for? How can I better serve those customers, both the B2C and B2B customers? I also like need to get more on top of financial stuff. I feel like it's just that category for lots of people. You know, it's super important, but you also have no background in it. And it's really easy to just like, I don't know, it's so easy for that stuff to get like out of your control, or like to just feel like it's really hard to get a grasp on it. And so I wanted to sort of think through like, what are my biggest issues with financial stuff? And like, how do I want to create a routine around those financial issues so that I'm not just thinking about them a few times a year, like at the end of the year, basically, like when it's time to do taxes. Like, how can I make it so that I'm checking in with financial stuff on a more regular basis and getting a real like in-depth understanding about what the financial state of my business is at all times? And that's, you know, a little bit of brainstorming around that. You know, I know that some people have accountants for tax preparation, or they might have a bookkeeper for ongoing service like throughout the year to sort of make sure that all expenses and stuff are accounted for. But I don't really feel like I necessarily need, I mean, tax preparation maybe, but my husband works in like personal finance. So although he doesn't have much experience with like a small business's in-depth finances, he can do tax preparation pretty well. So I don't really need either of those things, but I do need someone who can talk to me about like how my numbers are looking and like where I need to be cutting back, where it's worth the investment, how do I make those changes, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I'm just like getting together an idea of like, how do I make sure that I'm not just continuously avoiding thinking about money stuff until the end of the year and then like panicking about it. And then other stuff that sort of just like comes to me as I'm brainstorming are like ideas for marketing things. You know, how do I promote my business? What are some creative ways to do that? Other ideas. Once I had like written out my ideal customers, I started thinking more about like, okay, so what kind of products does that customer want, and coming up with ideas for that. And also like how to reach those people. What kind of email newsletter would that person want? Just thinking more about the specifics of that. I feel like up until now, in some ways, my decisions are kind of just based on what I feel I have the bandwidth to do. So another thing is like scheduling out how am I going to make all this happen? It's a lot of work for one person. And so this is also going to be a brainstorm of like, what does a week in the business look like? What does a month in the business look like? How do I break that down so that this is all manageable? Which is fun. It's like fun to think about, and it's fun to be thinking of ways to make the business grow.